All right, so last time we talked all about crime you can see, physical force. But now we're gonna go a little deeper. We're gonna look at what's going on behind the scenes, kind of like the invisible architecture of crime. We're talking about the systems, the identities, and the power structures that really drive these non-violent offenses.
So let's just jump right in with a big question, one that really gets to the heart of what we're talking about today. Think about it. When you hear the word crime, what's the first thing that pops in your head? For a lot of us, it's something violent, right? But is that the whole picture? Is all crime violent?
And that right there, that gets to the absolute core of what we're digging into. It's so important to get this. Non-violent does not mean harmless. I mean, think about the financial ruin from a huge scam, or how political corruption can just eat away at our trust in the system. That's devastating stuff. So that's why we're going to look past the physical side of things and really focus on the machinery underneath it all. The organization, the sense of identity, and the power dynamics that make these crimes tick.
Okay, so here's the game plan for this explainer. We're gonna kick things off with 5 main types of offenders. Then we'll get into the psychology of it all, how a criminal identity actually takes shape. After that, we'll zoom out to the big picture, crime and politics, what's real and what's myth when it comes to organized crime, and we'll finish up by looking at the pros, the professional offenders.
All right, first up, let's lay down a clear sociological framework. Because, not all nonviolent offenders are cut from the same cloth. Not at all. They're really different in their level of commitment, their skill set, and even how they see themselves and their criminal activity. What you're looking at here is kind of like a spectrum, right? It shows how a criminal path can evolve. On one end, you've got the occasional offender, maybe some opportunistic shoplifting, something situational. Then it can progress to the conventional offender, where crime starts to become a more, regular part of life. And then you get these really distinct categories. Political offenders who are all about ideology, organized crime, which is basically an illegal business, and then at the very top, you have the professional. For them, crime isn't just a thing they do, it's a highly skilled craft.
Okay, so we've got these different types, but that raises a huge question, doesn't it? How does somebody actually move along that path? How do you go from a one-time thing to a full-blown career? How does criminal stop being something you do and become something you are?
Well, it's definitely a journey, not just a switch you flip. It usually starts small, with a single act, but then you do it again, and that repetition starts to form a habit. And as someone gets deeper into that world, that criminal subculture, and maybe has more run-ins with the justice system, that behavior starts to crystallize. It becomes a core part of their identity, and before you know it, it's shaping their entire life path.
So how does this happen? Sociology gives us a few really powerful ideas to work with. First, there's differential association. It's a fancy term for a simple idea. You learn crime the same way you learn anything else, from the people around you. Then you've got labeling theory. This one argues that if society keeps calling you a criminal, eventually you might just start to believe it and lean into that role. And of course, both of these are supercharged by the social environment. The actual opportunities and pressures in a person's community. Okay, let's shift gears to a category that's, it's pretty complicated. We're talking about political crime, where the very definition of what's criminal is up for debate. It really makes you ask a super important question. Who gets to decide? Who has the power to draw the line between a crime and a legitimate political act?
Yeah, it's really two sides of the same coin. On one side, you have crimes against the government, things like espionage or treason. But on the other side, you have crimes committed by the government, when the state uses its power illegally against its own citizens. Think secret surveillance programs or massive corruption. What this really shows us is that the line between legal and illegal, it often gets drawn by whoever's holding the pen, whoever's in power.
All right, time to talk about the mob. Or, maybe not. Let's tackle organized crime, a topic that is just loaded with Hollywood myths. But what's it really like? What happens when we peel back all those movie stereotypes and look at the actual sociological reality?
First things first, let's get a solid definition so we're all on the same page. The key word here is continuous. This isn't about a single heist. It's an ongoing series of illegal transactions. And it's not a one-person show. You've got multiple people involved, many with specialized skills. And here's the kicker. The end goal isn't just to cause trouble. It's about economic advantage. It's a business, an enterprise, just an illegal one.
So, if you remember one thing, it's this. Forget the Hollywood version of the single, all-powerful kingpin. The reality is much more like a fluid network, a web of specialists, not some rigid pyramid. This network works because it's meeting a demand in the market for illegal goods and services. And this is so important, it's not totally separate from our world. It's actually embedded in the legitimate economy. It's using the same basic rules of supply and demand that Apple or Amazon use, just, for illegal stuff.
Okay, last but definitely not least, let's talk about the top tier, the elite of the nonviolent criminal world. We're not just talking about career criminals here. We're talking about the true professionals, the ones who have absolutely mastered their craft.
And this quote really says it all. In their world, these professional offenders are at the top of the social ladder. And they don't get there through muscle or fear, no way. They earn that status through their reputation for being incredibly skilled, incredibly clever, and incredibly successful.
So what makes a professional a professional? Well, they've got these highly specialized skills. We're talking master forgers or experts in confidence games. They don't just wing it. They operate with real strategy and precision. Their number one tool? Often, it's exploiting trust. And this is interesting. They keep the craft alive by taking on apprentices, passing down their secrets to the next generation.
And that idea of confidence games, that's the perfect showcase of their expertise. It's why in our next exercise, we're actually going to break down how these schemes work. Because when you see how they manipulate trust for money, you really start to get just how sophisticated this world can be.
So let's wrap this all up. As you can see, nonviolent crime isn't just random chaos. It's almost like a formula. You need the organization to make it work. You need the criminal identity to sustain it. You need the dynamics of power to define it, and it's all shaped by society's reaction. You put all those pieces together, and you get the full picture.
So, the big takeaway here, the most important thing to remember, it's this. Crime is not just about harm, it's about structure. To really get it, you have to look beyond the single act and analyze the systems, the social structures, and power dynamics that make it all possible in the first place.
And that wraps up our look into the complex structures of nonviolent crime.